Hey everybody, welcome to the 1947 Operators Podcast. In order to increase the rate of technology innovation in India, we need to increase the number of operator angels in India. Hence, we are launching the 1947 Operators. 1947 Operators is a podcast that unpacks the investing journey of the best operator angels in India. We will be covering areas like what drove them into angel investing, what's their investing process like, how do they source deals, pick deals, and win deals, how do they evaluate founders and the market size, what value do they bring to the cap table. We're hoping the 1947 Operators podcast will help more operators start their angel investing journey. As a result, we will see an increase in the number of operator angels in the startup ecosystem. Man, what a pod we had today. We had Madhu, the co founder of M2P. M2P builds a stronger infrastructure for the financial world. Their product help banks, NBFC, and online businesses go to market with a wide range of solutions across payments, lending, and banking. They're backed by one of the best investors globally, the likes of BeeNext, Insight Partners, MUFG, Tiger Global, Flourish Ventures, Omidia Network, to name a few. We covered areas like what drove him into angel investing, who was his first angel investor, who invested, who believed in M2P, how does he evaluate founders, his vision for M2P moving forward, his obsession of seeing India as a fintech factory for the world, who is the outside of work. All right, let's roll it up. I'm so excited to have Madhu of M2P on the 1947 Operators podcast. Madhu, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Shiva. Great to be part of this, this show, and we've got a exciting list of speakers. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
I'm super excited and looking forward to this one. Madhu, we'll dive right into it. What drove you into angel investing, and what was your first angel investment?
Sure. As a company, we were bootstrapped for many years. Initially, when we went out to raise some capital, nobody understood our business. This is like 2014, 15. We tried a lot, and then we just felt that this is probably not the business anybody would finance, right? And the world was very different back then. A ton of things have changed in India over the last 7, 8 years. uh, we just felt the need to be out there, and not put another founder through what we went through. I mean, we were lucky. We were just able to navigate and find our way through. Not a lot of founders are, lucky that way. And some of the brilliant ideas just die because of they just didn't get that initial oxygen. And over time, we also realized, only in 2020, we went out and we got external capital. Uh, we kind of could attribute a lot of value to it beyond the money itself. And a bunch of angels came and backed us, right? So folks like Kunal, Amrish, Jiten, a whole bunch of them were our first formal sort of financing round that happened. Uh, it was never the money. It was actually them sort of saying, going out there and saying that, we know what these guys are doing. That kind of left a mark, and in a sense that uh, you always have to give more than what you take, right? So I think that's the primary driver.
Gotcha. And maybe we can talk about the story of, when was Amrish or whoever was the first one who said yes to investing. Would love to dig deeper into that story.
Yeah, I mean, it's late 2019. I was in Singapore, and a friend of mine connected me to Shweta, who who was running, practically, Amrish's angel investments, and she was an independent investor as well.
Yeah.
I happened to sort of get some time with her to catch up for a coffee. Amrish actually came to drop her, and he said, "Let me figure out what these guys are talking about, API." And it was a chance meeting. And guess what? In like 45 minutes to an hour of our conversation, we walked out with a check, right? So I think the conviction got built just on the way that we were, thinking about it and building it. And he almost kind of fell off the chair when I told him that we've been doing it for 5 years, and kind of traction that we had up until that point. And he's been like a fintech guy pretty much for all his life, so he kind of understood, what goes into it, right? And what's the economic model that it can create, and so on and so forth. So I think he was, I would say, the first believer to just write the check. And I mean, obviously, you had a whole bunch of people who were saying, "Hum bhi back karenge," all that. But
Mhm.
to really take that leap of faith was Amrish in the first place. And then, when as he came in, we could just line up everybody else. It was a cakewalk. Yeah.
Got it. And I think you picked up a very important point where, operators can really help you move the needle with their
Yeah.
expertise and experience. Maybe Madhu, if you could talk few specifics, how, Amrish and Jitain and others have really helped you in the beginning or still they are.
Uh, I think we were very unlike an angel investment in some sense, right? We already had some traction.
Yeah.
We just could not, in our own sort of fallacy that we were living in, we felt that we could build this business, continue to build this business as it were. Uh, I think the framework was important in terms of zooming out and saying what this business could sort of look like 5 years or 10 years out.
Hmm.
As founders, when you're executing so close to it, you don't zoom out typically and see the big picture, right? I
Yeah.
think that framework was very important, number one. Even today, if there is something, any time of the day, I could just ping Kunal on WhatsApp and talk random things that is bothering us, right? Like
Yeah.
once I was in Bangalore, he asked me, "What are you doing?" Right? And I said, "I'm here for some customer meetings and all that." He asked me to just come to office if he had like a, no, we chatted for like 2 hours,
Hmm.
ranging from what's keeping you awake at night to
Yeah.
how we are building team. I think that time and that intent to sort of help is super valuable, right? It's unfiltered. In a lot of ways, founders go through a lot of self doubt.
Yeah.
You need some anchor to actually. I don't think your co-founders can also sort of contribute to it because you're all in the same boat.
Yeah.
You kind of get comfort at some point. You don't agree, and when you don't agree, you don't get that comfort.
Yeah.
But some of these operators who have been at scale
Hmm.
could really sort of, just the fact that you could talk to somebody and be that counselor is a
Yeah.
fantastic thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. I think that framework and zooming out and then, get to work with people who have done it themselves at scale gives you confidence. Madhu, typically there's bunch of moving parts into angel investing. First, you have to create access, meaning founders coming to you, and then of course you have to win deals as well. But given the brand that you already have, a lot of typically, let's say if I'm a fintech founder, I'll just reach out to or try my best to reach out to Madhu for his check because again, same things, right?
Yeah.
Experience and all that. So, in Madhu, now a lot of founders reach out to you. How do you evaluate founders? Right? Typically, you'll get what 30 minutes or 60 minutes, maybe 2 hours over a period of 2 weeks. What are few points that you look at and that triggers you to go back that person?
Yeah, I think there are two or three aspects to it, right? One is the fact that how deeply is that, founder, you know, having domain expertise of sorts, right? In the sense, has he worked in a large company where he was closer to that domain, which gives you unhindered access to, what's actually happening, right? You can't dream up stuff and say, I'm going to fix this, right? You'll find a lot of college kids coming in and saying, a canteen ka payment problem hai 5 6 years back.
Yeah,
I mean, that's not scalable business, right? It could just give you that high to basically solve for it, but you are not going to create an economic output. So therefore, to me, that what's the domain understanding of the founder and the founding team itself, right? So I think that's like super important. That's where you have they probably are coming from a very deep insight standpoint, which you can action on. And that's the same thesis we have taken actually to our M&A journey, right? When our company have done like 7 or 8 acquisitions, largely because not for tech or talent, but what deep domain expertise that founder would have,
Yeah.
or what problem statement they're trying to solve is something that others may not have, right? So that's one part of it. I think the second aspect is really this gut, right? Is this the right guy? In a 30 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour conversation, you'll really understand, what's the narrative that the founder is saying and what's the sincerity to it, right? And that's a lot of that is personal in terms of really figuring out whether this guy will has it in him for it to be. Sometimes there are misses, right? The founders comes across really good, but it was just cute, right? So it works in 8 out of 10 cases. But I think the gut is a very important aspect in terms of saying it. And third is, our own, evaluation of that sort of problem statement, right? In the sense, can this become large, or can this get dovetail into a larger company, right? So, outcomes are outcomes. So therefore, let's say if somebody is working on solution X, will this standalone become very large, or is this going to be a great story for somebody who's building something else, and it kind of goes and complements, right?
Hmm.
Uh, so I think to me the whole process is to sort of figure out what's that co-creation opportunity with that founder. If I don't have that time to build on something, is this something that I would have joined if I'm not building my own company, right?
Yeah.
Will I be willing to be part of that founding team, if you will? I think that's the litmus test as far as I'm concerned.
Got it. Love the framework. And Madhu, maybe we can talk about few of the investments that you've done, one or two stories, and also a few misses where later on it turns out the founder did great. And what did you learn from those misses?
Yeah, I mean, my first investment was in a HRMS platform called Zimio. I mean, like, until we were bootstrapped, we never had the capital. I don't think we have the money even now, but uh, we barely took out salary. So we kind of never really went out and invested and all. But only in 2020, I started sort of writing angel checks.
Yeah.
The first one was, Zimio, which is an HRMS platform.
Mhm.
Uh, I did something, prior to that, right? I spent between the first COVID wave and all through 2020. I actually spent a lot of time speaking to a lot of investors. Right? I spent like collectively somewhere around 8,000 minutes speaking to 45 odd investors just for our own company to figure out where we would land as a company,
Yeah.
and peddling different stories, different, theses, just to get a mental model around how investors are thinking about some of these businesses, right? So, and that allowed me to actually sort of create, a model in terms of when I get in a call with an investor, at least in early stage, in 5 minutes I could really figure out what will sell with this guy,
Yeah.
right? So that was an important sort of learning, which I realized that could be useful for folks who are trying to actually do that, right? So what happens is that folks, when they're trying to raise money, they almost immediately send out a deck and say that this is what it is. Things like, don't even share a deck.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have got to keep that. Send a small blurb. My marketing professor used to say, it should be like a girl wearing a skirt, long enough to cover the object and short enough to keep the curiosity on. So, I tell founders that don't sell the deck, because that guy is going to come with preconceived notion that this will work or not work, and he's just taking the call just for the heck of it, or he's working on some other deal for which he is looking for inputs. Right. So things like that, I realized over a journey that I labored on in terms of trying to get a model. Uh, and therefore, in a lot of these investments, I try and see if I'm able to get that founder across to thinking in that fashion. So
Yeah.
Lumia was the first one. I think they're doing pretty decently. They've done like 2 3 follow-on sort of investments.
Mhm.
From and then the whole craze around fundraising that happened, a whole bunch of things. Where I don't understand, I would prefer to just sit out and sit behind a fund. So we've done a lot of deep tech work, where we're sitting behind a fund. It's more LP type. Um, uh, that's just personal learning and gratification more than anything else, right? Like I would never go out and build rockets or flying cars, but there are
Yeah.
funds that are sort of backing some of these founders. It's fascinating in terms of how you can learn in some of these areas without actually, going to a classroom, right? So it's almost like a classroom fee that you sort of pay.
Mhm.
But I think to come back to your question, I think a whole bunch of places where I've missed here. I mean, I would sort of look at some companies and then say, "Hey, we could have uh, done this," right? But in my own way, we don't. I mean, we actually don't do it uh, for the noise around it, right? We've been very very quiet. We were a shy company, and that kind of DNA has rubbed off on us.
Mhm.
We don't talk a lot about it externally because
Yeah.
I think the value for us is between us and the founder. That is the relationship that we want to nurture.
Yeah.
We've got enough going on the other side. But the good part is that in our own journey, we have interactions with a lot of founders because early stage companies come to us to work with us and build their. So we have a vantage point view of what's happening, right? Even when there is a deal flow, investors come and ask, "Will this work? Will this not work?" and things like that, right? So yeah.
Gotcha. And Madhu, by backing other founders, do you think it has made you a better founder, a better operator?
Yeah, I think, I mean, like I said, right? I think it's about giving more than what you are taking in. And, I've had situations where, at least in the recent past, right, where uh, we've had some companies that have gone to real trouble, right? So, founder calls and, he just needs a hearing. And monetarily, whatever you can do, you would do beyond the, whole docs that go into it, right? But there is a certain boundary that you need to sort of draw, right? You could help them with, if they have to meet their payroll for a month and they're looking for a lifeline and all that. One or two places have done it, but I think we should. I never used to say no, and that saying no is something that I grew into, with sort of investments, right? And I also, when you say no, we're able to go back and reason out why it's a
Yeah.
no. You would actually sort of shy away from it, right? You're kind of closed. Personally, for me, I think that attribute is kind of helped even in other places, right? In hiring, when you're in a sales conversations where the team wants to do a deal, but you want to say no to it. So I think that maturity came in with angel investment, I would sort of say.
Got it. And whether you're right, you're been heads down and just building it. We don't get to hear much about you guys, and you've come a long way. I think I was reading up somewhere. The idea came over, or it was, I think you guys were having chai. That's how the kind of idea came about. And then for first 4 or 5 years, it was mostly bootstrap, and then all of a sudden within a year or 2 years, you've raised multiple rounds from one of the best investors, and you're not only in India, you're
Yeah.
globally.
Yeah.
Maybe you can walk us through the founding story to where are you today, and what's the vision for M2P moving forward?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we started out, I think when Muthu and I were colleagues at Visa, I think we've said this multiple times, right? So in the way we looked at the worldview that we had working for Visa was that a lot of stuff were broken, banks are not moving and things like that. So we really felt the need to go out and build something which would help businesses adopt payments more easily, right? Back then the only fintech that existed was someone like a BillDesk and very very early stage of someone like a Bank Bazaar and MSwipe and the folks like EasyTap and all were in their Series A or sub Series A. So not a lot of fintech action. Paytm was just beginning to gain traction and things like
Yeah.
that. But I think the fundamental thing that stuck to us was that in a market like India, you would have banks still ruling the roost, and they continue to be. And we'll have to find ways to sort of start working with them, not against them, right? So, initial wave of fintech was always being competing with the banks, and over time we've modulated to co-opting and cooperating with the banks, right?
Mhm.
Luckily for us, the whole narrative around fintech sort of took off in India. What we started out for solving for banks actually expanded to helping some of these fintechs not deal with banks at all, right? We were that layer, that that magic hand that would make things happen.
Yeah.
And we kind of used that, high octane growth on a lot of other players to our advantage in the form of converting that into a business opportunity where we were sitting in the middle and orchestrating a lot of these, fintech ideas. That kind of gave us a worldview in terms of, and also coming from Visa, you also are perched in a position where you look at what's happening around the world. It's not just, so this problem was not just limited to India, but our wings were clipped in terms of not being, in fund backed by venture. We really had to earn every dollar before we could spend that, right? So we kind of constrained ourselves to India, but in 2018-19, we felt that we've spent like 4 or 5 years trying to build this. And should we work towards a large outcome or a small outcome? And that's when we started going out, and we went out to other markets. We realized that how handicapped we were in terms of not having capital backing us, because in India we could do our jugaad, we could go speak to people, we'll find our way to get things done. But when you go out, you are in no man's land. Nobody knew you. I mean, you might have some connects and all that, but you just didn't have an anchor. That's when this whole need to raise capital, became way more pronounced. And by then we were in a whole bunch of ecosystems that were very prominent, right? So a lot of the early stage investors knew about us because we started appearing in their boardroom conversations in a lot of these places.
Hmm.
So we kind of said, we should use this to our advantage, and that's when we kind of went out and raised capital.
Yeah.
Luckily for us, I think we just, the whole growth happened. The whole cohort of companies that came in 2017-18, they started raising a ton of money, and everybody, started firing on all cylinders.
Hmm.
And the whole infra play in the West also started, getting more pronounced,
Yeah.
which meant that there was an economic model that people could attribute to some of these businesses, which was non-existent 4 or 5 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Marketa as a platform went public in 2020, 21. They're like a $20 billion company, built
Mhm.
in like 10 years. So we were seen as a Marketa for Asia. So we kind of rode that wave, if you will. But we also did something that is interesting, right? In the sense, we realized that we, at one end, we could, use this capital to actually go out and acquire companies or, add businesses that were adjacent to what we were doing.
Yeah.
So I think in the last year and a half, we've done like some 8 transactions. We've announced some, we've not announced some. So 24 months, I've been spending a lot of time with lawyers, like 5 financing rounds, 8 M&A. I've done my quota of lawyers. So we've compressed like 5 years of a journey in 2 years' time.
Yeah.
A lot of fun. And now we are kind of trying to stabilize the whole thing, get the house in order, because we've also added a lot of people. We were 70 people before we got our first check. We're like 1,100 people now.
Mhm.
So it's a very different organization, if you will. And bunch of these people came in when we were all locked up in our houses, right? So yeah, I mean, today the focus is more around just getting the house in order and trying to figure out how do we piece all of this together.
Gotcha. And but we were discussing about this earlier, where you're obsessed with this one theme where moving forward, the global fintech companies would come from India
Yeah,
for the world.
yeah,
Up until now, we've been, seeking inspiration from US and China, but moving forward, emerging markets and other markets would seek inspiration from the innovative fintech companies that would come from
right.
India. Would love for you to double click on it. And let's say you're telling this to a 10-year-old.
Sure. Yeah, 10 years is going to be hard. I tried, I have a 14-year-old. I try to tell him what I'm doing and why I'm so busy. But I'll take a stab at it. Right? I think the frameworks that have worked, right? India being this, the whole IT story is about you can build cheap in India and ship it to all over the world. That's what Infi, TCS, all of these, multi-billion-dollar companies have got built on. That you could have a sales organization in the West, but really sort of body shop the work to India. And if you actually sort of contextualize what's happening in India in the last 10 years, is the fact that uh, a lot of the work that has gone in has already solved for what I call as the first order problems, right? West is still grappling with moving money between one account to the other. PayPal came into existence 20 years back. It is still a relevant business. Can you imagine, right? Like
Yeah.
Elon Musk will go to Mars, it will still be at the same place, I guess. But the fact that the world in of fintech in the West is actually solving for very very foundational sort of challenges. Right, moving money is difficult. There is still issues around how you'll make payments efficient. They're still caught in the card world where the world has moved on to mobile and whatnot. But India has figured out to do this at a cost, economic value, which has almost turned payments into utility. Right, so utility pay और बेस प्रोडक्ट के लिए खर्चा नहीं कर रहे हो, right? Like voice
Mhm.
call is free for in India. Likewise, payments is free. You really have to build something on top of it to actually extract value and build a valuable business, right? So that's what the Indian payment companies are going through, and that will actually become the world order because uh, all said and done, we are one-fifth of the world, right? So and you have a super premium segment, which is what cred is building to. You
Mhm.
also have that at the other end of the spectrum, which is like completely at the bottom of the pyramid, right? So this is the one market where every 100 kilometers you will have cultural nuances changing, language changing, habits changing. It's almost like Europe, right? In a sense, right? We're just one country,
Yeah.
and Europe calls it as a European Union. So to that extent, we would have the ability to build stuff which can get ported to different ideas can get ported to different markets. In our own way, we are currently present in about 20 markets, and I keep calling India as the fintech factory for the world. We may not have one Google or Facebook coming out of India. I think UPI is the closest to having a product that is of global scale, that is now everybody than we that we've built out. But there could be like 10 years out, I feel we'll probably have 10 products that are UPI like, right, where we
Mhm.
can proudly claim that it got built in India, scaled in India, and then it's going to other parts. We've gone to remote places like Jordan, Egypt, where people recognize the value that Indian fintech teams sort of bring out. I'm super long on just that fact.
Got it. No, you are leading by example, right? You are doing it through M2P. And Madhu, we'll switch gears here. My friend Alfonso in the back, he keeps bugging me. He has a question for you.
Yeah,
He's the co-pilot. He gets to ask one question every
sure,
pod.
sure.
So he's asking Madhu, let's say money and attention or fame are not needed anymore. And for the time being, let's park M2P on the side. What would you work on?
I think impact is what we've always been we've been lucky in a lot of ways. I now have a team that runs the business. I'm constantly looking for impact in two ways. One is the fact that how are we able to port this business to other parts of the world, which is completely transactional from the company standpoint. But also, in each of these markets, we are actually going and figuring out what worked well in India. Is that something that we can port to this market, right? Like in a very, very early stage fintech action market like Egypt, we are trying to see how can we accelerate that whole, fintech action, right? So is there a partnership that we can drive, getting three, four other folks to actually build out like I wouldn't call it accelerator, but a very focused way in which you can sort of build it. I think
Mhm.
impact to me is what uh, uh, is of value in my own personal way.
Mhm.
We're constantly sort of trying to sort of do that, right? I think anything that can leave an impact, create something that people can sort of pick up and sort of run with it, is what I would try to do.
Love it. And what's your relationship with success?
Well, if I can, I think we are trading everything for time. So if I can take time out and not worry about my business. We're not yet there.
Yeah.
So therefore, I think that's even in our teams we try to not, for example, completely switch off in the weekends, right? So we don't we should. think of taking time off and work can happen. We'll have numbers to meet all the time. It's very hard, when we have like a very high density people in the team and you tell them slow down. It's okay, right? And some of them come from very large organizations where they've been in pressure cooker situation.
Yeah.
I've literally have to slow them down, right? I think so we actually want to be a happy place from a company standpoint as well. I mean, that's just a manifestation of how we are as founders. And that's what, I think if you're able to put more time back in the hands of, the team and yourself, that to me is happiness.
Got it. And Madhu, it could be professional, it could be personal. Is there something that you have changed your mind on recently, and why?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Yeah, I think I've had this belief that you have to be here in India to be solving for it. Over the last 12, 18 months, I've come to realize that the world is a global village. You don't necessarily have to be here to make meaningful work happen.
Mhm.
Uh, a lot of that is because of the fact that we were, activating new markets and all, when the whole world was locked down. Uh, I think that is probably one change where I felt like the physicality of being in a market
Yeah.
is something that I've moved away from, and that has kind of opened up our horizon to start thinking about if I have to build a global business. I don't necessarily, tomorrow if I want to start in the US, I don't need to move lock, stock, barrel to the US. You can still
Yeah.
do it. Yeah,
Gotcha. As long as you have a decent computer and internet, you're good to go.
that's right. And a
Uh,
coffee shop, maybe.
and Madhu, of course, we know you because of M2P.
Right.
What do your friends know you for? Who are you outside of work? What do you do on the weekends?
My week never ends. So, we work in the Middle East, so they work on Sundays.
Yeah.
Saturdays are the only days that we get. Off late, like last couple of years, it's been sort of super busy on the work front. But whenever I get time, I cook a meal for the family, and that's something that, both my kid and my wife loves and look forward to. Uh, I did some physical activity in terms of running and going for a hike, but a lot of that is kind of under duress thanks to all the travel that's been happening. Yeah, I mean, I read a bit, and that's pretty much what I do.
And any books you keep rereading?
No, I'm super bad at it, right? Like that's a habit that I keep falling off the cliff every once in a while. There's this period of where you commit to yourself saying, "I'll take an hour every day." If I stick to it for 2 weeks, it's it's great. I don't reread so much, and I'm also trying to figure out, is there a the Unacademy founder hired somebody to actually help him read books in an accelerated manner. I'm trying to find if there's a balance that we can strike to read a bit more than what I do currently.
Don't worry, you can Google pay me. I'll do the same thing for you. uh, Madhu, I had one more thing in mind. It's a monkey mind. It just keeps going
Yeah.
there. But yeah, no, I think it was a lot of fun, Madhu. I really, really appreciate you for taking the time, coming on the pod, and really, walking us through your investing journey, angel investing journey, and M2P. And I love the, your thesis of India becoming the fintech factory for the world. And of course, I'm looking forward to what you end up doing through M2P and other, impact initiatives that you have. Thanks a lot for doing it.
Thanks, Shiva. Lovely talking to you and your partner. Awesome.